I didn't know this, but apparently EURO-Spec cars are safer than North American spec cars. What the heck?
That is very, very interesting to hear about. The only thing I know about European cars is like sometimes when we try to go there, we have to watch out that we don't rent a manual because
Yeah.
we don't know how to drive a manual. But that's all I know about European cars.
And Europeans seem less likely to drive tank-sized cars.
That is, yeah, the massive wheels as tall as you trucks.
The dang Ford F-150. I mean, why the heck do cars need to be that big in America? Because bigger is better in the US of A?
Do you think they're using those huge trucks to transport lots of goods and do lots of construction work and such?
Of course, of course. Definitely don't just drive to their office every day in just a massive truck and sit in traffic the whole time.
With an American flag on the back.
Oh yeah, that happens way more than you'd expect if you've never been to America. People put American flags on the back of their trucks. It's weird. But let's just jump into this video and see what this is all about. Here we go.
Spec cars. There's a lot of differences between North American spec vehicles and European spec vehicles. And I don't mean just the size or the types of vehicles offered, but actually the legal and regulatory differences between North American spec cars and European spec cars.
All
It's
right.
something that the average consumer probably doesn't know, but car enthusiasts know about these differences. And we often refer to EU spec or rest of world spec
We don't
versus
know
North
anything about
American
cars.
spec.
We're not
Today
car
I want to cover the
enthusiasts.
differences between North American
Zero.
spec vehicles and European spec vehicles, and why I believe European spec vehicles are actually safer than North American spec vehicles because of these
All right.
differences. So let's jump into it.
Oh, he's got the EU plate, but with USA there.
So before moving to the Netherlands, I was used to North American spec vehicles and the look of North American spec vehicles. Things like amber parking lights, side markers, red turn signals. But actually, after living in the Netherlands and spending more time with European spec vehicles, I realized European specs are actually safer and actually better looking. You don't have the amber parking signal. You don't have amber
I have
turn signals
never
in the
noticed that
rear.
in my life, I
there's
gotta
a lot of
say.
these differences. I mean,
So
joking
small that I didn't even know.
signal,
I would have
have
assumed just like either every car had that or no cars had it. That's something I've never seen.
I've never seen it.
amber turn signals in the rear. There's a lot of these differences I'm going to jump
Oh,
into. So
interesting.
go ahead and use the chapter
It doesn't
markers
flash the whole
if you want to
light.
bounce around and see the differences, but I'm going to cover all of these in a bit more detail. Also, it's worth mentioning that the US and Canadian specs are pretty much the same. Canada uses kilometers and requires daytime running lights, but aside from that, basically the specs of the cars and the regulatory differences are the same between Canada and the United States. Europe has a different spec, and it's also in line with a lot of other countries that's outside of Europe, and those are the main differences that I'm going to compare today. All right, the first thing is the one that I'm the most passionate about, and that's red turn signals versus amber turn signals. The rest of the world has amber turn signals like this.
Really?
It is safer, it is easier to distinguish
realize
between the brake lights and the turn signal. The rest of the world
That is way easier to see, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely way better, but it's something I've never noticed. So like, do imported cars, like if you got a BMW in the US, would it be the amber one, or is this just talking about all American, because it's saying EURO-Spec?
I think it's just all cars that are sold in America just have the same thing, I think.
Okay.
I'm trying to
Interesting.
think of my mom's car because she has a BMW. I feel like it flashes red normally,
Yes.
but I do not know. I don't see it if I'm driving it, or, it's hard to know.
does this. In North America, red turn signals are allowed. And not just red turn signals, but actually the same light fixture that's used as the brake sometimes is used as the turn signal. In some cars, it's a separate bulb from the brake light, but they're still red. In this case,
Yeah,
in the
they look
Mercury
exactly
as you
the
can
same.
see, it's the brake light that's flashing to be the turn signal. This has always driven me nuts,
Wait.
even when I lived back in the States, because it's hard to distinguish when a car is braking versus turning. You have
Yeah,
to pay a little bit
that is
more
so
attention
true.
because it's hard to distinguish, is the red
The only thing that the only thing that's different is it's only one side. That's the only thing.
You have that like split second where like, if you like only happen to look at one side and you saw it flash for a second, you're like, oh shoot, are they, is that a brake or are they actually going to turn here? But then after that, you can figure it out pretty easily.
I guess in a lot of situations, when somebody's about to turn, you brake anyways, but it's still odd that that's how they do it.
light turning on because it's the brakes? Is it turning on because it's the turn signal? Sometimes bulbs are out and it's hard to tell. So I've always been passionate about this. This is how it should be. This is how the rest of the world is, and this is how it should be. But this is allowed in North America, and it's actually quite common. And I've even heard from American car people that they prefer the look of the red turn signal, even though amber is objectively safer. So the Mercury Grand Marquis...
So the way he's saying it, I'm guessing BMWs would have this. If he's saying that it's common, not all cars have it, so maybe they do.
Red turn signals. The Netherlands is one of the few countries in the world that does allow red turn signals.
That's just like stuff you don't notice.
Do allow it. So it's one of the things I didn't have to adapt when I brought the car over here. But objectively, I believe the amber turn signal is much better. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you prefer, red turn signals or amber turn signals? There's even a whole Facebook group dedicated to this. I think a lot of people are passionate about this topic, but yeah, I believe amber turn signals are much better and much safer.
I used to have a Mustang, and I believe my Mustang would go like, it had like 3 lights, and it would go ding, 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 ding,
yeah.
ding, ding,
There's
ding.
a lot of, there's some, don't like Jeeps do that too, where they have like an arrow instead?
Maybe.
Or some sort of car I know has like an arrow or something. Is that allowed in Europe? I don't know.
I don't know.
The next big difference that I want to cover is amber parking lights, or side markers as they're also called. It's a bit hard to see here because in the Mercury they changed out the bulb, but in North America, most cars have an amber side marker parking light that is required as part of the headlight system. Whereas you see here on the BMW, the parking lights don't require that. And if you look at a US-Spec BMW 3 Series, there's a big amber side marker light here, which I think is quite ugly. It's a look that I was used to back when I lived in the States, but actually after living abroad, I realized this is a much cleaner look. And actually, what value does that amber side marker light add? I don't think it's necessary. Much cleaner look. Here on the Mercury, they converted the light to white, but it was an amber parking light, the same here. But yeah, it's just a difference that I don't think is necessary, and I think the European spec looks a lot better than North
Wait till
American
he
spec.
sees the cars in Korea. They all have
the next
their
big
dang,
difference is side
blue door bumpers on every single car. That looks, that even though it's so small, it looks so ugly.
I feel like you really got to be a car enthusiast to notice like the things that he's pointing out.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
turn signal indicators. So the EU and pretty much the rest of the world require side turn signal indicators. Most of the time they're integrated in the mirror like this now, but back in the day they used to be side mounted on the fender like you see on the Mercury here. North America doesn't require this, and to me this is a key safety feature because when you're driving alongside a car and you want to know if that car is going to be moving into your lane, you can't see the front and rear turn signals if they're signaling their lane change. Side marker indicators are key, and really key is safety feature. Nowadays, most new cars in the US do have side marker indicators on the mirrors because it's kind of seen as a luxury feature, and I think it's something that the European brands kind of influence in the North American market. And actually, if you look at something like a Toyota Corolla or a Hyundai in the US, by default, they don't have the side marker turn signals, but higher end trims do because it's kind of seen as a luxury feature because of the European brand influence in North America. But I do think this is a really key safety feature that should be required on all vehicles around the world, and it surprises me that in North America it's not a safety requirement, it's not a required feature at all. Next thing I want to cover is rear fog lights. So in the EU and most
This is more about lights than I expected it to be. I thought it'd be about like engines and stuff.
Yeah, it's like so much more aesthetic stuff, but it doesn't seem to influence the safety a decent amount, I would suppose.
Other markets around the world, rear fog lights are a required feature or are just featured on cars, and they're usually on the driver's side or the center point of the vehicle. In this case on the 3 Series, it's just on the driver's side. Personally, I would prefer if it was on both sides, but this helps with rearward visibility in poor conditions such as fog or heavy rain. And this is a really key safety feature that I wish was available or actually required in the United States and Canada, because I've been in many situations in Florida in really heavy rain where you can't see very far in front of you, you can't see the car in front of you. And what people in Florida do are put on their hazard lights so you can improve the visibility, which is illegal and is kind of a dumb workaround. Rear fog lights solve that problem. This is something that should be standard in the US and Canada. And actually, on European brand cars in the US and Canada, they do offer the feature. They actually just ship it there anyway. It's not required, but they leave the configuration as is, and they have the rear fog lights. And the funny thing that I see is people don't know how to use rear fog lights in the US and Canada. You can see some B-roll footage here of cars in Canada driving around with rear fog lights on in normal conditions, because actually I believe that people don't know the difference between the buttons, and they think that these are regular fog lights, but they're actually rear fog lights being misused. So it's really funny to me, but I think if there was education and regulatory requirements in the United States and Canada for rear fog lights, people would use them and it would improve safety in poor visibility conditions. The next difference I want to cover is
Fog
something that I
lights.
notice each time that I'm switching between this vehicle and the BMW is the side mirrors. And this was something I didn't even really know about before living here. So in North America, the side mirrors on cars are a little bit different. The driver's side is pretty flat.
I like
and
this
the passenger
angle.
side is a bit more
Yeah,
compressed, but then it has
it's
this
quite
text in
cinematic.
it that you see
Some
objects in
Steven
mirror
Spielberg
closer than they
stuff here.
appear. So you have different focal lengths for each of the mirrors. On the
Okay.
passenger side, it helps with the blind spot and side visibility, but on the driver's side, it's quite flat, and you have a pretty big blind spot. On the EU-Spec mirrors, both are convex, and there's even a part that acts like a blind spot mirror. So it's objectively safer
Wow.
because you have a wider
That's
field
much
of view,
nicer.
you have a smaller blind spot. The problem is the image is wider and the vehicles are a little bit smaller, which affects your perception of the size. And so in North America, they only allow that on the passenger side, which to me, it's a safety thing. If you allow it on both sides of the car, you have better field of view, smaller blind spot, and it's objectively safe. Next difference is license plates. And you can see American and Canadian style license plates are a lot smaller. In some cars, they look okay. Like this Grand Marquis was obviously designed for the smaller license plate. But in some other cars, this small format doesn't look very good. It doesn't complement the design of cars very well. And in my opinion, actually, the American and Canadian size license plate is a little bit less safe because the characters are smaller. You can see over here, if I were to take a Florida license plate and put it on a BMW 3 Series, which is probably the
that's
first
actually
time this has been done,
a lot
you can see
smaller.
how small it is in
Yeah.
comparison to the Dutch license plate. The
I
letters
mean,
are
that
a lot
makes a huge
smaller.
difference
It's
if
harder
like
to see
there's
from
a
further
hit
back.
run or
And
something.
Yeah.
And they're getting away, you have the 2 seconds to read it, and if it's like 20% bigger maybe, that gives you basically 20% extra time to see
Like
it.
the actual letter part of it, look at this 7 compared to that F. That is
Yeah.
so much larger. That's insane. Wow.
Actually, I think the Dutch license plate and the kind of European style wide license plate complements the look of the car a little bit better, especially in the front. So I think it's safer and it just looks better to have the European style license plates. Now this varies a lot. Different countries have different regulations about license plate sizes. I'm not going to go into all of those details, but let me know what you prefer. Do you prefer the European style license plates or do you prefer the American style license plate? Let me know in the comments below.
Definitely easier to read
Ultimately,
the
I
European
do wish
one.
that the regulations
Yeah.
would align.
I like
from-
the cute pictures
Let
on
me know in
this
the
one, though.
comments.
It's got a picture of an
Yes.
orange.
They got some fancy ones in the US.
Ultimately, I do wish that the regulations would align from North America to the rest of the world because that would actually allow for European spec vehicles and other vehicles that are currently not sold in the North American market to actually be sold there because the regulations would align and that would be allowed. But until those regulations align, which I don't think that'll ever happen, we'll have differences between North American spec vehicles and European and rest of the world spec vehicles. So that's pretty much it. Those are the main differences I wanted to cover between EU spec vehicles and North American spec vehicles. Like I said from the beginning, I prefer the look and safety features of European spec vehicles, but there are also some features I didn't cover in North American spec vehicles that are nice, like remote start, how some states don't
Yes.
require front license plates, different safety features, and there's a lot of other differences that you can't see, such as suspension differences, tire differences. I can't cover all of those in one video, but these were the things that I wanted to cover that you can really see when you look at the two different vehicles, and those are the differences that I like on the European spec vehicles. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I crazy? Do you prefer the look of North American spec vehicles? Let me know.
It's a very interesting. This, like, for us, I mean, we've driven cars since we were 16 pretty much. We've had cars, but there's a lot of stuff that we just would have never noticed, and now we do know.
Yeah, and it's like things that are small enough to where, like, why wouldn't we be willing to change it? Like,
Yeah.
if it improves the safety a little bit, causes one less accident, change it then. I mean, it seems
Why
like
not?
maybe there's a lot of money involved today. Big American companies will lobby the government out of it so they don't have to change their factories and lose $20 per car or something. Who knows?
That's the only thing it basically would come down to is adding something like that is going to cost them more money. So they're like, no thanks. We're good. Just keep it the way it is.
Money is better than safety to them.
Always. Money is more important than everything. That's the American way. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.